Alright, let's finish this guy out and give him the optional glow map I was talking about a second ago. Alright, so let's just get right to it and let's get this thing done. So for my glow map, I'm going to need to add some kind of like fiery type of magma melted metal texture to it. And there's a pretty quick and easy way we can do that. So I'm going to go to my normals, and yet again I'm going to go to my damage texture and duplicate it. And I'm just going to use this damage texture all the way down here in my glow, and we're going to work my fire off of that normal. Set it back to a normal filter, and let's go. Alright, great. Let's go to adjustments and go to variations, and let's shift it to the red and yellow and brighten it a little bit. Alright. Oh, I didn't actually put it in the normal layer. That might be a little too bright, so let's just change it up real quick again. There, now I can actually see it. Red and yellow, and let's just stick with that. Alright, I might want to put a little bit more contrast and darken it a little bit. Just to add some nice color variations. There we go. Shifting between reds and yellows, always a good fire effect. Alright, so we'll call this fire. But we don't want just a uniform glow like this. Let's just go ahead and preview and see what this looks like. And I'll show you how this could be seen as not that great. So if we go to Marmoset, boom. This thing is melting. I don't know. It just doesn't look that great because juxtaposed next to the dull metals, it's just way too bright, even for a fire map. Alright. What we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of variation between the values of this fire here. We're still going to kind of give it that molten metal feel, but we're going to add a little bit more of a subtle twist and hint to how it works. So let's get our glow map working, and I'm going to expand it, and I'm just going to come up here and call this value mask. And here's a little trick. We're going to get a nice shuttle shift between values of our fire here. So if I change this layer to multiply and go to filter, render, and make clouds. See, this is the clouds. It creates this nice variation between whites and darks. If I put this back on multiply, now I see that I have different varying degrees of hot and cool on my fire here. I'm actually going to duplicate this layer again, not for added effect, but for more variation. I'm just going to take this layer and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees to add a little bit more variation. Alright, next I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to edit the fire map itself. What we want to do is we want to avoid having the fire too much around the edges of our seams, because it'll make it very apparent that if we go in here, it'll be very apparent that there's a seam right here. See, the fire's not exactly flowing into one another. Alright, so let's just go ahead and see what we got with this little variation we have with our cloud rendered out layers. Alright, we got a little bit more toned down map. If we bring it up, alright, I think we could add a little bit more variation to it though. See how it's just so uniform and it's almost cartoony looking. So let's keep going with it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in and I'm going to start editing my actual fire map and start erasing, especially around the seams here. I don't want the fire just to engulf the whole damage part. I want there to be intermittent fires around here. So I'm going to definitely delete it off these seams here. I'll take a smaller brush and do that one later. I don't want to lose too much information. And if we do it varied enough, it won't look like there's just one big split down the seam. It'll look natural, like why this part's on fire and why this one isn't. So I'm going to lower my brush, and I'm going to go down the seams of this too. Add a nice variation here. We can just get rid of that stuff outside of the UV island. Just erase it a little bit. You don't necessarily have to clean up outside the UV island. I mean, it's not going to get rendered anyway. But for the sake of having a nice clean texture, I like to pay a little bit of attention to it. Alright, great. Alright, let's look and see if there's any more seams that could cause trouble. There we go, right on the bottom of my front wall here. And we want to pay attention that we're not deleting the or erasing the fire where the seam is actually mirrored across. Like right here, here's our bottom island here. This is actually going to be repeated over to the next side. Actually, I'll come in and this is going to be repeated over to the next side. So we'll go in here and add a little bit of variation. Alright, now that my seams are taken care of, I'm going to come in now and lower the opacity of my erase. And that's a little too much. Come in here and start wrecking with the fire in some places. Maybe it's a little too much. Just so I can get different cools and warms of the fire. Like this fire is hotter than it right here. And maybe have like a big pool of fire right there. This fire is about to go out. The fire right here is about to go out too. I think I deleted too much on that side. Alright, and then really go in here and mess with it. A lot of fire right here. I think that's a little too much. Like just intermittent, like tentacles of fire still exist on our damage. Maybe it was blown up like 3 hours ago, and it's still on fire, but it's starting to cool down now. That's the kind of effect we want to add. And if I come in and add all the rest of my layers, we're starting to see that now it's not just a full blown out hellhole of fire. It's more scattered and varied. Alright, so let's see what this does for us. Mass save. Still a little much, so we can just go down to the map intensity. You know, maybe inside the game we could have the map glowing like this, like to give the illusion that the fire is like stoking. But right down here, the fire is so uniform and so mirrored that it's very distracting. I mean, on the front here, it looks pretty cool, and even there, it's not too bad. But I mean, there's just too many mirror designs in here that make it just not okay with me. Too distracting. Get rid of my specular. So how are we going to fix this? Well, I'm going to go in and use my clone tool, and I'm just going to blast this whole side with fire. I think it needs to have a lot of fire going on here to make it believable, and it'll kind of hide up the repeating nature of the fire. So with my clone tool, I'm just cloning various pieces that are already on fire, and we're going to add a little bit of fire back. Maybe this will work, maybe it won't. Maybe it'll give us the desired effect we want. Never helps to experiment, or never hurts to experiment. Let's see how it looks now. We're getting there. See, notice how that seam is coming in full force now. So we still need to go back there and fix that seam. I'm going to work on this a little bit more and see if I can get to a better result. So I'm going to pause it. And we're back. So I basically had to go in and really hand paint the fire masks so it wasn't so uniform. I mean, I'm still not happy with the mirrored aspect of this too much, but it comes with the territory of trying to conserve texture space in general. So let's see how I did that. Maybe I can get a nice turntable of the model here. I want to reset the mesh. There we go. I like to have my turntable going one way and my light going the other way. It really helps the light play off the model. We'll go really slow with it. So here's my final model. I could probably take it a little bit further and work on it a little bit more, but is this a necessary object in your level where you have to really hone in on it and make it really great? Um, Probably not. I think this would be good enough. We'll go ahead and probably load it into a game engine and put it into environment and see if it's too distracting or not. And we can always come back and tweak it later if we needed to. But for the most part, I'm calling this guy done. I'll show you what I did with the glow map real quick. I basically had to just go in and paint in the black spots where I wanted the fire to be a little bit less severe. And then I just used some filters and noise areas and or noise filters and blurs and the unsharp mask to really give it a nice variation. I mean, I could probably even go in more and blur it more just to get a nicer transition between lighter value to darker value. And then of course I made another clouds layer just to add a little bit more subtle variation between the values of the fire. Alright, so we put our black base on and now the fire is ready to start burning. If you wanted to on your prop to go in and add lights and uh, glowy effects to different parts of your model, that's fine as long as it's not distracting the player or as long as it makes sense for the function of your object. You just don't want to add details that don't make sense to why your object exists. Um, to make stuff believable, you really got to give it a backstory and a purpose. So that's a little lesson about adding too much information to your object without much sense. But for the most part, I'm done with this, and I'm going to call it a quits on this whole tutorial. We covered a lot of stuff. It kind of the tutorial kind of got longer than I wanted it to, but I think it was necessary because I think the results are well worth it. And when you get used to the workflow, you can start banging out models like this in a day. So, hope you enjoyed everything. If you have any questions, always you can always ask me. And thanks for watching.